The harsh vacuum of space offered little forgiveness for mistakes. Sarah Chen knew this better than most as she guided her salvage vessel, the Lucky Strike, through a field of debris that shouldn't have been there. The ship's sensors had picked up the wreckage hours ago, far from any known shipping lanes or settlements. Computer, analysis of debris composition, Sarah asked, her dark eyes scanning the twisted metal fragments that floated past her viewport. Unknown alloy detected. Material properties suggest advanced manufacturing techniques not present in human database. The AI responded in its characteristic monotone. Sarah leaned forward. Her interest piqued. After 15 years of salvage operations, she'd seen her share of strange things in space. But this was different. The debris field showed signs of weapons fire, yet the damage patterns didn't match any known human or allied species weapon signatures. A faint energy reading caught her attention. Computer, focus sensors on grid sector 7. What am I looking at? Energy signature detected. Possible life support systems still operational. Caution advised. Signature pattern does not match known configurations. Sarah drummed her fingers on the console, weighing her options. Salvage law was clear. Any vessel in distress required investigation and assistance. But something about this situation made her neck hairs stand on end. Well, she muttered to herself, no one ever got rich by playing it safe. Sarah engaged the maneuvering thrusters, carefully positioning the Lucky Strike alongside what appeared to be an intact section of the unknown vessel. As she suited up for EVA, Sarah ran through her standard safety checks with practiced efficiency. The magnetic boots clicked satisfyingly against the deck, and her helmet seal showed green across the board. With a deep breath, she cycled the airlock and pushed off toward the alien wreckage. Up close, the vessel's construction was even more bizarre. The hull seemed to shift colors slightly as she approached, like oil on water. Her helmet lights revealed intricate patterns etched into the surface that seemed to serve no obvious structural purpose. Sarah found what looked like an access panel and activated her suit's universal interface tool. To her surprise, the panel slid open smoothly, revealing a cramped airlock chamber beyond. The artificial gravity was still functioning, which explained why the wreck hadn't completely broken apart. Computer, maintain constant scan for any changes in energy signatures, she commanded as she carefully entered the alien vessel. Her suit's sensors indicated a breathable atmosphere, but she wasn't about to take any chances. The interior was dimly lit by emergency lighting that pulsed with a strange bluish tinge. Sarah moved carefully through the corridors, noting the unusual scale of everything. Slightly larger than human standard. The air felt heavy with tension, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being washed. A sound from ahead made her freeze. It was faint, but unmistakable. Movement. Sarah's hand instinctively went to the rescue cutter at her belt. It wasn't much of a weapon, but it was better than nothing. "Hello," she called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "This is Sarah Chen of the salvage vessel Lucky Strike. I'm here to help." The response came not in words, but in action. A figure emerged from the shadows, towering nearly 8 feet tall. Its skin was a deep purple that seemed to shimmer in the emergency lighting, covered in what appeared to be some kind of ceremonial armor. But what caught Sarah's attention were its eyes. 4 of them, arranged in a diamond pattern, all focused intently on her. The alien raised what was clearly a weapon, though its design was like nothing Sarah had ever seen. Its voice, when it spoke, was a complex harmony of tones that her translator took several seconds to process. "Human, you should not be here." The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear enough. Sarah slowly raised her hands, careful to keep them visible. "I picked up your distress signal. I'm here to help, if you'll let me." The alien's upper eyes narrowed while the lower pair widened, an expression Sarah couldn't begin to interpret. "There was no distress signal. Then someone wanted me to find you," Sarah replied, her mind racing. "The question is, who and why?" The alien seemed to consider this, its weapon never wavering. I am Zarek, guardian of the third sphere. My vessel was attacked by those who were once my brothers. They believe I have betrayed our sacred laws. And did you? By their definition, yes. By the true meaning of our laws, they are the betrayers. Zarek lowered the weapon slightly. You are either very brave or very foolish to board an unknown vessel alone. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. In my experience, those often amount to the same thing. Look, whatever's going on here, you're clearly in trouble. My ship has decent medical facilities and enough space to get you to safety. The offer stands, but we should probably decide quickly. If someone led me here, they might have led others too. As if in response to her words, a new alarm began to sound throughout the vessel. Zarek's upper eyes swiveled toward a nearby display panel, and Sarah didn't need a translator to recognize the alien equivalent of a curse. War hunters, Zarek growled. 3 vessels. They tracked my quantum signature. War hunters. Sarah didn't like the sound of that. Elite warriors, assassins. They will not stop until their mission is complete. Zarek turned all 4 eyes back to Sarah. Your offer of aid, does it still stand knowing that helping me means making enemies of them? Sarah glanced at the display showing the approaching vessels, then back at the wounded alien warrior before her. Her father had always told her she had more courage than sense. Time to prove him right again. My ship's small, but she's quick, and I know a few tricks these war hunters probably haven't seen before. Besides, she grinned, making powerful enemies is something of a specialty of mine. For the first time, Zarek's features arranged themselves into what might have been a smile. Then perhaps, Sarah Chen, we should depart. I suspect this is the beginning of what you humans call a beautiful friendship. Let's survive the next few hours first, Sarah replied, already planning their escape route. Then we can work on the friendship part. The Lucky Strike's engines burned hot as Sarah pushed them well beyond their rated capacity. Behind them, the 3 war hunter vessels maintained their relentless pursuit, their sleek forms cutting through space like predatory fish through dark water. Your ship's power configuration is highly irregular, Zarek observed from the co-pilot's seat, which barely contained their massive frame. All 4 eyes were fixed on the engine readouts, the upper pair squinting in what Sarah had learned was an expression of confusion. That's because I've modified just about everything on this bucket, Sarah replied, her hands dancing across the controls. When you work salvage, you learn to get creative with what you've got. Speaking of which, she flipped a switch, and a spray of debris erupted from the Lucky Strike's rear compartment. You're jettisoning valuable materials, Zarek stated, their lower eyes widening in alarm. Sarah grinned. Not exactly. Watch. The debris cloud sparkled with unusual energy signatures, and the war hunter vessels suddenly broke formation, their sensors apparently detecting multiple phantom copies of the Lucky Strike among the scattered material. Salvaged sensor scramblers, Sarah explained, modified to broadcast false ship signatures. They'll figure it out pretty quick, but it should buy us some time. Zarek's features arranged themselves into what Sarah now recognized as their version of impressed surprise. You've weaponized salvage technology. Ingenious. And completely unauthorized, I assume. There's no regulation against creative recycling. Sarah shot back, already plotting their next move. Now, want to tell me what got you in so much trouble with your people? Must have been something pretty serious to warrant sending war hunters after you. The alien warrior was silent for a long moment, their armor plates shifting slightly in what might have been discomfort. I discovered something I was not meant to know. The guardians of the third sphere are sworn to protect all sentient life within our domain. But some among our leadership have corrupted this purpose. Corrupted how? Sarah asked, though she had a sinking feeling she knew where this was going. They are developing weapons, biological agents designed to target specific species. Under the guise of protecting our space, they plan to eliminate any races they deem problematic. Sarah's hands tightened on the controls. Like humans, among others, When I discovered the truth, I attempted to gather evidence to present it to our High Council. But the conspiracy runs deeper than I imagined. Now I am branded a traitor, and the evidence I collected is sealed away in a facility at the edge of Guardian space. A warning light flashed on the console, interrupting their conversation. The war hunters had seen through Sarah's deception and were closing fast. She needed to buy more time. "Computer, execute maneuver pattern Delta 7, she commanded. The Lucky Strike dove sharply, using a nearby asteroid's gravity to slingshot them in a new direction. "So that's why you let me find you. You need help getting to that evidence." "I did not let you find me," Zarek protested, though their upper eyes shifted in what might have been guilt. "But, yes, the facility's defenses are designed to be impenetrable to Guardian technology. But human systems, particularly ones as uniquely modified as yours, might just slip through," Sarah finished. She shook her head, but couldn't help smiling. "You know, there are easier ways to ask for help than getting yourself blown up and waiting for a salvage operator to find you. Would you have believed me if I had simply approached you with this story?" "Fair point." Sarah checked their heading, mind already working on plans within plans. "This facility, I assume it's heavily guarded." "By the most advanced defensive systems in Guardian space," Zarek confirmed. "A direct assault would be suicide." "Good thing I'm not planning on a direct assault then." Sarah pulled up a star chart, her dark eyes glinting with determination. "I've got some contacts in less reputable corners of space. People who specialize in acquiring things that aren't supposed to be acquired. Give me 12 hours, and I'll have everything we need to infiltrate that facility. You would risk your life, your freedom, to help prevent this atrocity." Zarek's 4 eyes focused on her intently, even knowing that failure means certain death. Sarah thought about all the stories she'd heard of worlds ravaged by mysterious plagues, of species that had vanished without explanation. How many of those had been tests by these corrupted guardians? "Let's just say I'd never been good at walking away from a fight that needs fighting," she replied. "Besides, I've got a personal stake in this now. Can't have your people deciding humanity needs to be protected out of existence." A new alarm blared. The war hunters had launched some kind of energy weapon. Sarah threw the Lucky Strike into a spiral evasion pattern, the ship's straining engines protesting the maneuver. "Of course," she added through gritted teeth, "we have to survive the next few minutes first. Any Guardian tricks you can share that might help with that?" Zarek's upper eyes narrowed in concentration while their lower pair tracked the pursuing vessels. "Their quantum torpedoes are guided by probability matrices. If we could generate enough quantum interference—" "Say no more." Sarah's fingers flew across the console, making rapid adjustments. "Remember those sensor scramblers? They're not the only salvage tech I've modified. Hold on to something." As the war hunters closed in for what they thought would be a killing shot, Sarah Chen and her unlikely alien ally prepared to show them just how dangerous a cornered human could be, especially one with a habit of turning junk into weapons. The Crimson Nebula lived up to its name, its swirling clouds of ionized gas casting a blood-red glow across the Lucky Strike's hull. Sarah had killed all non-essential systems, letting the ship drift deeper into the treacherous cosmic storm. In the co-pilot's seat, Zarek's armor plates had shifted to a defensive configuration, responding to the increased radiation. "The nebula will damage their sensors," Zarek observed, all 4 eyes scanning the roiling gases outside. "But it will also affect our systems." "That's what I'm counting on," Sarah replied, her fingers hovering over the controls. "Guardian ships rely heavily on quantum-based technology, right? All those fancy probability calculations." "Correct. Our systems are far more advanced than—" Zarek paused, upper eyes narrowing. "Ah, the quantum interference from the nebula's radiation." Sarah grinned. "Sometimes older, simpler technology has its advantages. I've replaced most of the Lucky Strike's quantum sensors with modified analog systems. Less precise, but more reliable in conditions like this." A flash of energy lit up the nebula behind them as the war hunter vessels entered the gas cloud. Their sleek forms were barely visible through the crimson haze, but Sarah could tell they were moving more cautiously now. "They're splitting up," she noted, "trying to box us in. Standard hunter-killer tactics." "You seem well-versed in military strategy for a salvage operator," Zarek observed. "Let's just say salvage operations aren't always as peaceful as they should be." Sarah activated a series of controls she'd installed herself, bringing several unofficial modifications online. "Now want to see what happens when you combine Guardian tech with human ingenuity." The Lucky Strike's engines flared to life, but instead of trying to escape, Sarah drove them deeper into the nebula. The war hunters followed, their superior speed allowing them to close the distance rapidly. "The radiation levels are becoming dangerous," Zarek warned. "Even my armored shielding will not protect me indefinitely." "Just a little further," Sarah muttered, her eyes fixed on a particular swirl of gases ahead. "You said Guardian ships use probability matrices for targeting, right? Well, what happens when you feed those matrices bad data?" Understanding dawned in all four of Zarek's eyes. "The nebulous quantum fluctuations, combined with your modified sensor scramblers, will make their targeting systems see 1,000 possible locations for us, each one equally probable." Sarah's grin turned fierce. "And I've got one more trick up my sleeve." She threw the Lucky Strike into a tight spiral, activating the salvage technology she'd modified. The ship's hull began to glow with an eerie light as it absorbed and redirected the nebula's radiation. The war hunters fired, their energy weapons cutting brilliant paths through the crimson gases. But their shots went wide, their advanced targeting systems confused by the combination of natural interference and Sarah's modifications. "Now," Sarah shouted, throwing all power to the engines. The Lucky Strike shot forward, straight toward the largest war hunter vessel. At the last possible moment, she activated her final surprise. The radiation they'd absorbed was released in a massive burst, amplified by the nebula itself. The wave of energy crashed over the Guardian vessels, overwhelming their sensitive quantum systems. Alarms blared and emergency lights flashed as the mighty warships were reduced to drifting hulks. "Their systems will reboot eventually," Sarah said, already plotting a course out of the nebula. "But by then we'll be long gone. How's that for human ingenuity?" Zarek was silent for a moment, all four eyes fixed on the disabled war hunters. "I begin to understand why some among my people fear humanity's potential. You are unpredictable." "Thanks, I think." Sarah checked their heading. "Now about that facility where they're keeping your evidence. I'm assuming it's got defenses just as advanced as those war hunters." "More so. The facility is considered impregnable." Sarah's smile widened. "Good thing impregnable is my specialty. I've got some contacts in the outer rim. People who know how to get things that aren't supposed to be gotten. Give me a few hours to make some calls." "You truly believe we can succeed?" Zarek asked, their tone somewhere between hopeful and skeptical. "Look at what we just did." Sarah gestured at the disabled war hunters falling behind them. "Guardian quantum tech is incredibly advanced, yes, but it's also predictable. It relies on probability and patterns. Humans, we specialize in doing the improbable." She pulled up a star chart, already planning their next move. "Besides, we're not just fighting for ourselves anymore. If what you discovered is true, every species in this sector is at risk. I don't know about Guardians, but humans have a hard time walking away from that kind of fight." Zarek's armor plates shifted in what Sarah had come to recognize as their equivalent of a thoughtful nod. "Perhaps that is why the corrupted ones fear your species so much. You do not simply accept what you are told is impossible." "Damn right we don't." Sarah set their course for the outer rim, where she knew people who specialized in the impossible. "Now let me tell you about this smuggler I know. She's got access to some very interesting cloaking technology." As the Lucky Strike left the Crimson Nebula behind, its unlikely crew of human and Guardian prepared for their greatest challenge yet. They had proven they could survive a direct confrontation. Now they would have to be even more clever to expose a conspiracy that threatened entire civilizations. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, in a facility believed to be impregnable, evidence waited that could change everything, if they could only reach it. The Guardian facility hung in space like a dark jewel, its crystalline surfaces absorbing, rather than reflecting the light of nearby stars. Sarah studied it through the Lucky Strike's viewport, impressed despite herself by the elegance of its design. After their stop in the outer rim, her ship's hull was now coated with a prototype cloaking material that bent light around them. Expensive, but worth every credit. The genetic vault is in the central core, Zarek explained, their 4 eyes focused on the facility schematics. Surrounded by quantum-locked security fields and automated defense systems. And you're sure the evidence is still there? Sarah asked, making final adjustments to their approach vector. The smuggler's cloaking technology was good, but it wasn't perfect. One wrong move and they'd be detected. It must be. The corrupted ones would not dare destroy it. The bioweapons research is too valuable to them. They merely ensure no one can access it. The Lucky Strike glided silently through space, approaching a maintenance airlock that Sarah's underworld contacts had identified as a potential weak point. The ship's modified sensors showed no signs of detection yet, but Sarah's palms were sweaty on the controls. "Remember," she said, "we've got maybe 20 minutes before they realize something's wrong. The cloaking tech will hide us from their quantum sensors, but it can't fool physical observation forever." Zarek's armor shifted, panels sliding into combat configuration. 20 minutes to reach the core, retrieve the evidence, and escape. It will be difficult. Difficult is what we do best. Sarah engaged the docking sequence, the Lucky Strike's systems interfacing with the airlock through a series of bypass codes that had cost her nearly everything she owned. Ready? The Guardian warrior checked their weapons, a mixture of their own energy rifles and some less elegant but equally effective human armaments. Ready. The airlock cycled open silently, and they moved into the facility. Sarah had studied the layout extensively, but the reality was even more impressive than the schematics. The corridors were constructed of the same light-absorbing material as the exterior, creating an almost organic feel. They encountered their first obstacle almost immediately, a quantum-locked security gate blocking their path to the central levels. Sarah pulled out a device she cobbled together from salvaged Guardian tech and human ingenuity. This should create a localized field that matches the quantum signature of authorized personnel, she explained, activating the device. But it'll only work for about 30 seconds before the system adapts. 30 seconds is sufficient, Zarek replied, readying themselves for action. The gate flickered and opened. They moved quickly through maintenance corridors and service tubes, avoiding the main passageways where they might encounter facility staff. Sarah's modified scanner warned them of approaching security patrols in time to hide. But as they neared the central core, something felt wrong. The security measures, while impressive, weren't as overwhelming as they'd expected. Sarah's neck hairs stood on end, her salvager's instincts warning her that things were too easy. They reached the entrance to the genetic vault without incident. Sarah deployed her quantum signature device again, while Zarek covered their backs. The massive doors slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the vault was a marvel of Guardian technology. Rows of crystalline storage units stretched into the distance, each containing genetic samples and research data. But Sarah's attention was drawn to the figure standing calmly in the center of the room. Another Guardian, their armor more ornate than Zarek's, waited for them. 4 eyes regarded them with what might have been amusement. "Zarek." The figure spoke, their harmonics indicating high rank. "You have done well bringing the human here." Sarah's blood ran cold. She turned to Zarek, whose armor had shifted to a pattern she'd never seen before. "What's going on?" "I am sorry, Sarah Chen," Zarek said, their voice heavy with genuine regret. But there was no other way to test the theory. "What theory?" Sarah's hand moved slowly toward her weapon, though she knew she was outmatched. The high-ranking Guardian stepped forward. "Whether humans could overcome our most advanced defenses, You see, the bioweapons program was real, but it was never meant for mass deployment. It was a test to identify species capable of surviving it. Species worthy of elevation. Elevation to what? Sarah demanded, though she had a sinking feeling she knew the answer. To join us as guardians of the third sphere, Zarek answered. Our civilization is ancient, but we have grown stagnant. We need new perspectives, new ways of thinking. Your solution to the war hunters proved what I had suspected. Humanity's adaptability and ingenuity could reinvigorate our order. Sarah laughed bitterly. So this was all a recruitment drive. The conspiracy, the chase, the disabled war hunters, all stage. The war hunters were real, the high-ranking guardian corrected. Zarek took a great risk. If you had failed to overcome them, you both would have died. But you succeeded beyond our expectations. Your species has proven its worth. And if we had failed, how many other species failed your little test? Silence answered her question. Sarah's hand tightened on her weapon. You know what I think? I think you're right about one thing. You have grown stagnant. So stagnant that you'd risk genocide just to find someone to shake things up. Well, congratulations. You wanted human ingenuity. You're about to get it. She raised her salvaged guardian weapon, but not at either of the aliens. Instead, she aimed at the vault's central control console. Sarah, Zarek's voice held warning and genuine concern. Think carefully about your next action. Oh, I have. Her finger tightened on the trigger. You wanted to see how humans handle impossible situations. Watch closely. The genetic vault's control console exploded in a shower of crystalline shards as Sarah's shot connected. Alarms blared instantly, and the vault's atmospheric containment fields began to fluctuate. You fool. The high-ranking Guardian's harmonics distorted with rage. You'll destroy everything. No, Sarah corrected, already moving. I'm saving everything. Computer, execute Protocol Omega. Back on the Lucky Strike, systems she prepared came online. The ship's modified transmitters began broadcasting everything that had happened in the vault. The Guardian's confession, the truth about their tests, all of it, on every frequency they could access. You can't seriously believe you'll escape, the Guardian leader said, their four eyes blazing. This facility is impregnable. Sarah grinned. You know what your problem is. You're so focused on quantum probability that you forget about good old-fashioned cause and effect, like what happens when you introduce a massive power surge to a quantum-locked security system. The facility shuddered as the Lucky Strike's jury-rigged systems pumped enormous amounts of energy into the security grid. Quantum fields began to collapse throughout the structure, causing chaos in the facility's carefully ordered systems. Zarek, the Guardian leader, commanded, "Stop her." But Zarek stood motionless, their armor shifting in patterns of uncertainty. She's right, they said finally. We have lost our way. Our tests do not measure worth. They measure only submission to our will. Then you will die with her. The leader raised their weapon, but Sarah was already moving. She dove behind a storage unit as energy bolts sizzled through the air where she'd been standing. You still don't get it, Sarah called out, pulling something from her pocket, a small device cobbled together from salvaged parts. Humans don't play by your rules. We make our own. She activated the device, and suddenly the vault's gravity reversed. The Guardian leader, unprepared for the shift, slammed into the ceiling. Sarah and Zarek, who had been warned by her earlier words, were ready for it. The genetic samples. The leader cried out as storage units began to drift free of their moorings. They'll be destroyed. Wrong again, Sarah replied, pushing off the ceiling toward the Lucky Strike's airlock. Check your sensors. The only samples being destroyed are the bioweapons. Everything else is safely locked down. I've had hours to plan this, remember. The facility's systems were in complete chaos now. The Lucky Strike's broadcast had reached other Guardian ships in the sector. Through the facility's windows, Sarah could see them approaching, but not to stop her. They were coming to investigate the truth, she'd revealed. You've ruined everything. The Guardian leader snarled, still struggling against the reverse gravity. No, Zarek corrected, moving to Sarah's side. She has given us a chance to remember who we are supposed to be. Guardians protect. We do not test. We do not judge. We have forgotten this. They reached the Lucky Strike's airlock, just as the facility's backup systems began to engage. Sarah's gravity device would fail any second now. Come with me, Sarah said to Zarek. There's a lot of space out there that could use some actual protecting. Zarek's 4 eyes studied her for a moment. You would trust me? After my deception. You chose the right side in the end. That counts for something. Sarah glanced at the approaching Guardian ships. Besides, I think we make a pretty good team. The facility shuddered again as more systems overloaded. The Guardian leader had managed to right themselves and was shouting orders, but it was too late. The truth was out. Perhaps, Zarek said as they boarded the Lucky Strike, it is time for the Guardians to learn from humanity, rather than test them. Sarah threw herself into the pilot's seat, her hands flying over the controls. Lesson 1. Sometimes the best way to fix a broken system is to shake it up completely. The Lucky Strike's engines roared to life as they disengaged from the facility. Behind them, more Guardian ships arrived, but not to pursue. They were there to investigate, to question, to change. You know they'll come after us eventually, Zarek observed as they cleared the facility space. Some will not accept this change easily. Let them come, Sarah replied, plotting a course for open space. We've got human ingenuity and Guardian wisdom on our side now. Plus, she patted the ship's console affectionately. I've got plenty more surprises built into this old girl. Where will we go? Everywhere. Sarah's eyes sparkled with adventure as the stars stretched before them. There's a whole galaxy out there full of people who need protection from real threats, not tests. And I can think of worse things than having a Guardian watching my back. Especially one who understands that sometimes the best plans are the ones that break all the rules. The Lucky Strike accelerated into the darkness of space, carrying its human captain and Guardian warrior toward whatever adventure awaited them. Behind them, the Guardian facility hung in space, its perfect order disrupted but perhaps, finally, its true purpose remembered. In the end, it hadn't taken quantum calculations or probability matrices to change things. It had taken human